I'm sitting here with my good friend Ken Compton, who has one of the greatest jobs, I think, in the world. He's a Major League Baseball scout, and we're going to let him tell you the various organizations he's worked for and who he works for today. So, Ken, I think when I first met you, you were working for the Seattle Mariners at the time. But before we get to that, why don't you start at the beginning? Tell me about, when you started playing ball and when you decided this was going to be your career.
Yeah. Well, baseball kind of decided that for me because I was a frustrated player who just wanted nothing more than to be, everybody dreams of playing in the big leagues, of having as long a career as I could. And I don't know if it was my inability to hit the slider or misfortune or what, but my career was derailed shortly after college. I was playing at Long Beach State. Had a few tryouts with the Dodgers and Milwaukee Brewers, and it didn't really pan out. Kind of a funny story. I was getting ready to sign with the Brewers, and they needed extra warm bodies because they were going to have 2 teams in the California League. And just before spring training, they made the big trade at the time was Vukovic for Ted Simmons. And all of a sudden they said these guys were making outrageous money, like $600,000 or $700,000 at the time. And they ended up having to drop a minor league ball club, which would have been the one that I was going to try out for in spring training. So anyway, I got into coaching, high school and junior college coaching. And while I was coaching in junior college, a scout that actually had scouted me approached me and said, I always thought that you were kind of a baseball guy, a baseball rat, that you would make a good scout. Are you interested in learning about scouting? So I said, sure. So he took me under his wing. He was with the Detroit Tigers at the time, and took me under his wing and taught me the basics of scouting. And I was recruiting for Long Beach City College, and so I was seeing a lot of players in the area. So I was kind of doing double duty. I was seeing players for Long Beach City, and also if I saw players I thought were pro prospects, I would tell this scout. So, and that was fun. And then I did it for a year, and then the next year the scout for the Atlanta Braves came in and basically made me the same offer, but he said, I'd like to actually pay you a little bit to be my part-time scout, and I want you to quit coaching for a year and see how you like it. So I had a job with a gas company that allowed me to get off usually before noon every day, and then I'd go scout. And I thought, well, at the very least, this would be like advanced recruiting. I'd learn where the schools are, I'd learn the coaches, I'd learn how this scout breaks down ball players. All I can do is help my resume because I really love being on the field working with players. So I did it, and it was great, and I loved it. And I totally got my fill of baseball. And the next year, the Seattle Mariners needed a full-time scout in Southern California, and had observed me working with these other 2 organizations the last 2 years, and ended up getting interviewed and hired by the Mariners. This is back in the winter of 1988 to cover Southern California for the draft. In the summer, we do some minor league work, a little big league work, but probably 80-90% of the job was scouting the amateurs for the draft. So anyway, that was how I got started full time.
How long were you with the Mariners?
I was with the Mariners for 18 years. I had the Southern California area for 4 years. Probably the most notable guy that I had drafted and signed was Brett Boone out of USC. Bob Boone's son and Ray Boone's grandson, and they were one of the few, and I think they might have been the first. I don't know if they were the first or just one of a few 3-generation families that had all played in the big leagues. And so, and that was fun, just working Southern California and trying to get guys in the draft. And then they promoted me to West Coast supervisor, so I had the western third of the country. And I did that for 3 years, and then I was promoted to Major League Special Assignment Scout. So now I was seeing drafts all over the country, just kind of doing whatever they needed me to do. Mainly Major League work, and that's when they asked me to do some advanced scouting, different type of scouting for Lou Piniella, our manager at the time, to go out ahead of the team and see the team that we were going to play next, and basically figure out how to beat them. The other types of scouting is for acquisition. How can you get a guy in a trade or as a free agent or a waiver claim or a draft or whatever. With advanced scouting, it's almost kind of like you're an extension of the coaching staff. You're the spy that goes out and says, how do we pitch to their hitters? What are our hitters' approach should be off of their pitching? What do they do as a team? that bunt, steal, hit and run, any combinations of players, score, out, counts, innings, where we might predict when they might put on plays, how does the manager utilize his bench and bullpen and all that. So that was really a high-intensity, fun job. Started off with just one assignment against Kansas City Royals, and I did it, and then we swept them. And Piniella says, all right, get Compton into Chicago. So I went into Chicago, and this was in '95 when we were making that run trying to catch the Angels. We were 12 and a half games back in August. And I think I just became a rabbit's foot, and over the next 6-7 weeks, we just couldn't lose, and the Angels couldn't win, and we caught them, and I was out ahead of the club, and it was fun. So then the next year, I ended up doing a lot more of that advanced scouting. And then, so I did that for 2 years. I was a Major League Special Assignment Scout, and then I was promoted to, my last 8 years in Seattle was Director of Professional Scouting. And I coordinated everything we did on the professional end, not the draft, but the Major League Scouting, what we did in the minor leagues, instructional league, fall ball, Arizona Fall League, and then the stuff we did in the winter for the Latin countries, for Mexico, Puerto Rico, Venezuela, and the Dominican, coordinating what we might do in the wintertime there for scouting. So I did that for 8 years, and then, so that was, a total of 18 years there with Seattle. And it was a good ride, and it was fun. Things changed, and an opportunity came up with Minnesota to cross-check the country for the draft and to scout the American League and the big leagues after the draft. So I'm in my 6th year now with Minnesota, and it's great. It's another great organization that believes in scouting and player development, and doesn't just say it, but really believes it. And so 3 years ago, I made a decision that we had enough guys seeing amateurs and needed 2 or 3 guys just to be in the big leagues all year. And so that's what I've been doing the last 3 years, is just strictly Major League work.
Is it a lot like other businesses where you know people and they know you and your work, and that's how you end up going with another club, or is there a lot of that, or is it mostly on your record? Like when, for instance, when you signed the Boone, did that all of a sudden give you, say, credibility, as opposed to they really know your work and what you're doing?
Yeah, I don't know if anybody's really out there keeping score of other people's scouts and who they've signed that have gotten to the big leagues. Some maybe, but I think it's baseball's like a lot of other businesses, that once you're inside, people know who's who, and who are the good guys, who are the bad guys, who's, what organizations. You're even thinking that way at times, who could I see myself working for if I wasn't working for my organization? What other organizations do you respect or appreciate how they go about doing their work? And then when you're in the industry long enough, you know those people for a long time. They become your friends. It's kind of a semi-lonely job. You're out on the road a lot by yourself, but then sure enough, you're going to run into scouts from other organizations. You're going to be at the same hotels, you're going to be in ballparks, be dining with them, at times maybe giving them a ride back and forth to the ballpark or vice versa. So it kind of becomes a little fraternity. And through that, I think that's how you get to know other organizations and how they operate. And I knew people with the Twins for a long time. Mm-hmm. And in fact, the friend that I grew up with, I actually helped him get a scouting job with the Twins. So I was friends with his boss at the time, and so I knew a lot of these people, and they knew me. But of all the clubs, if you look around, I've never been a believer that the grass is necessarily greener on the other side. But I knew what they stood for, what their core values were, their mission, their values. And I thought, if there was another club that I could see myself working for, it would be the Minnesota Twins. There's others that were like, I don't know about that. I thought I'd be a lifetime Twin. But when this opportunity came up, and things had changed in Seattle, and it wasn't quite what it was, for 18 years. So it was time for a change.
One last question for you. When was like the defining moment in your life when you thought, I've got to do baseball? Baseball's what I'm going to do, and I'm going to do, all of a sudden, you're married, you got a kid, and you're going, well, I don't know. But when was the moment when you said, or what incident took place, or was there even a moment when you said, by God, baseball is what I'm going to do?
Well, it's funny you'd ask that, because there was a very clear, dramatic moment in my life. kind of a part of my life story, which I don't know if I've ever really shared with you. But after all my opportunities had gone by the wayside as a player, I had about a 2-year period where I really wasn't involved in the game physically. I wasn't playing or coaching or doing anything. I was working for the gas company. And I thought, well, I don't know, maybe God wants me in the ministry or something. So I actually took some classes at seminary. I got really involved in my church, you know, and so I thought, well, you know, maybe this is what is in store for my future. And I remember after about 2 years of doing that, doing this gas company job, being home, done by noon every day, doing these other things, I remember I've had pretty positive, upbeat person. I think I just had maybe one depressed afternoon in my life, and I was done with my gas company job. I had nothing to do. I was under challenged. I was a graduate, had a college degree, really feeling under, how do you say it? You know, I had a lot more to offer than just doing this job with the gas company. I remember laying on the floor and telling my wife, I says, well, you know, I've really looked at this ministry thing, and I said, and I really don't feel called to the ministry. You know, I believe in God and all of that, but I just don't feel like called to be a professional Christian. And I said, man, you know, I really miss baseball. And that became the defining moment. My wife says, well, you're done at noon every day. She goes, why don't you coach? You've got all kinds of free time. And I'll never forget it, because somehow I was on my feet, out the door, in my car, and down to Millikan High School in what seemed like 2 seconds. I walked right up to my friend Dan Peters, and this was my alma mater, who was coaching the team, and I said, Dan, you need a coach? And he didn't smile, he just pointed at the locker room. He says, go get a uniform. You know, and that's what got me back into baseball. And in I guess initially a part-time role as an assistant at Millikan High School. And then the next year I became a head JV coach, then I went on to Long Beach City College, and everything just kind of took off from there. From Long Beach City College to Long Beach City College / Detroit Tigers to Atlanta Braves to Seattle Mariners, and now I didn't need to get, you know, boom. But it was that afternoon, laying on my living room floor, looking up at the ceiling, saying, man, I miss baseball. And my wife saying, well, why don't you go coach? And it was like, boom, I was all in, and it just took off from there. It's been amazing.
That's great, Kenny. Thanks so much. I hope that this year's MVP is a guy you found. And we'll see you down the road.
Thanks, buddy.